briefly. So we look at wellness, and we have been exploring 4 issues around wellness. We started with environmental wellness, and in environmental wellness, we looked at 2 things. We looked at toxicity, and then we look at the benefits of actually being outside in the environment. The sun, the air, the forests, and all the benefits of that. But as our environment gets very complicated, there are issues of toxicity, and therefore we have a detox program that supports the removal of heavy metals and toxic metals, including all the things like viruses, infections, molds, and all the things that come into our system and interfere with wellness. So that was number 1. Number 2, we looked at physical wellness. And in physical wellness, we explored a couple of things. We explored stability, balance, flexibility, and strength, or what I'll call stamina, right? We looked at 4 important aspects of physical wellness that are very critical for you to have optimized wellness. And that was number 2. Number 3, we looked at emotional wellness. And with emotional wellness, we looked at 2 important things. We were looking at the overall issues of sleep and stress. So when we explore emotions, we are looking at issues of sleep and issues of stress. And these are 2 critical areas where the hormones actually drive our ability to actually achieve wellness. Last week, we were in the 4th area, which is nutritional wellness. And in the area of nutritional wellness, we've looked at a couple of things, and I'm just going to go over that today so that you get a complete sense of what we've been working through. We wanted to initially talk about, as a summary, our key focus is on functional and lifestyle interventions. That is the key focus of this clinic. And what's functional medicine? It's the medicine that looks at the whole person. The whole underlying biochemistry is interrelated. Traditional medicine, or what I call Western medicine, would look at the heart, or the muscles, or the lungs, or the eye and nose and ear, or the brain, and look at them as disjointed organs with specializations, or your dental. In functional medicine, we are looking at everything to have a comprehensive understanding of your state of wellness. And so that's what we focus on. And the number 1 issue that we explore when we talk about nutrition are 2 fundamental things that are required for understanding. One is the metabolic reserve, and we will just talk about that briefly so that everyone is reminded that the metabolic reserve is the ability or the capability we have for actually building a nutrient support that's going to allow us to actually respond in the long term in the event of famine. The architecture of the human being was built around, over the centuries, around feast and famine. And during the feasting period, we built the reserves that were needed for the famine period. So the metabolic reserve is the reserves that the body builds to respond when there will be issues of stress or nutrient deficiency. So metabolic reserve is a very critical component of our survival. And the second principle is what we call the physiological resilience. And what's physiological resilience? It is the ability or the capability or the capacity for us to meet present requirements. Say, for example, our fight or flight response is a physiological resilience requirement because it requires us to respond in the present. A sustained response is then supported by our metabolic reserve. It's very important that we understand that. These are the two principal issues around the nutritional architecture. So last week, we then spoke about a couple of things. Number one, we spoke about macronutrients. And we discovered that there are actually 5 big macronutrients. And I'll list them and then we'll talk about some issues around those nutrients. So we have number 1 are proteins, number 2 are carbohydrates, number 3 are fats, and the 2 extra ones we've added, which is now in the literature, it's kind of surprising. Number 4 is water, and number 5 is fiber. So these are the 5 macronutrients. And what are macronutrients? So let's talk about what is a macronutrient. A macronutrient is the way nature delivers calories and nutrients to our bodies in a macro format. That is, there is calories, which is the energy component, and there are nutrients. So those are 2 different things. In American culture, people think calories is nutrients. No, they're 2 separate things. So macronutrients are packed with calories and nutrients. And therefore, when we talk about macronutrients, we're always exploring the overall energy and the nutrient composition of it. So we are looking at the energy and the nutrient composition in terms of determining what the optimal intake would be. And then we use language like the glycemic impact. The glycemic impact speaks about the energy part of it, which is the sugar that is in that macronutrient. And we also talk about the total energy content, which is the total amount of calories. So whenever you do your body composition, very important you understand this, whenever you do your body composition, it gives you the total energy requirements, basal metabolic rate at rest, and the total activity rate. The activity rate is the energy requirement for the body when the body is moving, and the basal metabolic rate is when the body is resting or sleeping. So those 2 tells you what for you as that individual, for your age, weight, and height, and sex, what that metabolic total energy requirements are. And they are driven by how active your body is. And it's all different for each of us. But in a summary sense, the overall metabolic rate, high metabolic rate, activity metabolic rate for men is around 2,500, and the basal metabolic rate for men is around 1,800. And it's typically higher for men than for women. So when we look at macronutrients, we are looking at the nutrient composition of them, and we're looking at the energy composition of them. You could survive only on nutrients, but you need the energy component that is going to be required for physiological resilience. So a lot of the calories are required for physiological resilience. What's that? for the immediate response. The energy requirements that are in the metabolic reserve tend to be the fats, because when the body runs out of sugar or carbohydrates to make energy and proteins, it then looks for the fat reserves and converts the fat in the mitochondria to ATP. So the body uses proteins, carbohydrates, and fats to create energy. So whenever you feel low energy, or you feel like you are not, you're tired, those are all signs of a low energy output. And typically it would lead, if it's chronic, to what we call mitochondrial dysfunction, with the body not being able to produce energy as required for the body. And that is why sleep is very important, because when we sleep, all the energy output is then used for the cleaning and the healing and the repair that is required. When we are awake, that metabolic rate goes up, because just being awake requires a lot of energy than being asleep. So the basal and the activity metabolic rates tend to be significantly different, about 800-900 calorie different. Just being awake requires a lot more energy. So it's important we understand that, why rest and sleep is important, to give the body time to heal, to use the energy for healing rather than for movement or for being aware and being alert. It's very important. So we have the 5 big macronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, fats, water, and fiber. So now let's talk about the micronutrients, and then we will also look at some functionally essential nutrients. So again, I'm summarizing what we did last week, so I'm going very quickly. So let's look at our micronutrients. Where did I keep my duster? So let's look very quickly at micronutrients. And micronutrients are in 3 or 4 groups. So let's look at micronutrients. Right? So we have macro and micro. Micro are already broken down. They are not as complex as macronutrients. Typically, micronutrients come at a pure level of the nutrient without the extra loading of the energy component, which tends to be carbohydrates. So in the first group, we have vitamins. And we have vitamin A, we have B. B is complex. So we have B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and then I think 9 and 12. Right? Those are the B vitamins. Then we have C, D, E, K. Those are the vitamins. So it's important that we know them, and they are all critical nutrients for survival. And interestingly, the body has what we call a proportional amount that is required for the body to actually to be optimized in its performance. So we have what we call upper, lower limits, and upper limit requirements for all of these vitamins. In the second group, we have minerals. And the minerals are as follows. We have calcium, chromium, and copper. Calcium, chromium, and copper. We have iodine and iron. Iodine and iron. We have magnesium, manganese, and molybdenum. And we have phosphorus and I can't read my own writing. And we have selenium and we have zinc. So we have all these minerals. And typically when you come to our clinic and we run your urine samples with doctor's data, It would give us the toxicity levels for heavy metals, which is the environmental issue, but it will also give us the levels of the active essential minerals which are in your urine. And that extracted level gives us a sense of how much would be inside your body.